side mostly, but also through my paternal father's side. My people are descendants from the Karanakawa. My ancestors have been on the lands we now call Corpus Christi for at least the last 2,000 years. We use at least 2,000 years because a lot of folks, when we talk about indigeneity, they want proof. And we have a medical examiner that was able to date some remains of our ancestors to 2,000 years old, but we believe we've been here for much, much longer. So we've always been on the coast that involves Corpus Christi, Galveston, South Padre Island, and Houston, and like the teeniest bit up north. Now we're all over the place. I live in Austin now. I showed up to that one just to support my people in solidarity and to try to continue off this fight against Enbridge. And the fight is, there's this oil distribution facility on a piece of land that is unceded Karanakawa land. So like we still think it's ours, it is ours, just like the laws nowadays wouldn't tell you that. Specifically though, this piece of land is a Karanakawa settlement, so it's a place where my ancestors would stop and rest as they would follow the moon tides in their hunting seasons and their farming seasons. And so because that's where they would stop and rest and hang out for a long time, it is home to tens of thousands of artifacts like pottery and tools and jewelry and weapons. And I have tons on my altar that I was gifted from my elders of this clan and the other one, and it's something that I want my future children to be able to have access to. Super important to keep it accessible, and not just accessible, but to keep those artifacts in the ground and safe and in whatever pieces they are, because they're already pretty fragmented, especially because my people are still kind of trying to fight off and correct what's being taught, which is that my people are extinct. So to have an actual tangible piece of history that shows us that we were indeed there and we still are here is a huge deal. Not only that, but it's just part of defending the Mother Earth and everything that she gives us. This oil distribution facility is just part of the larger fossil fuel movement, which is simply not sustainable. It's not realistic. It's doing more harm than it is good. So that's like the other part of the fight too. So we get lots of supporters from all over the place who are Indigenous folks who hear about our struggles and they can relate and they want to show their support. And then there's environmental activists that are more about the, getting rid of fossil fuels and turning to some new sustainable renewable green energy. Lots of us Indigenous folks are neither state nor federally recognized. We do got a couple tribes down here that are state recognized. I believe we have a couple that might be federally, but they have their headquarters in Oklahoma just because that's where they were all pushed. And because a lot of us Indigenous folks down here on these lands we now call Texas are neither state nor federally recognized, we just don't got a foot to stand on when it comes to protecting our land or even trying to claim the heritage. Every so often we'll encounter folks who will be like, oh, like you're not really Indigenous, like you're mixed, or oh, like now like there's only like two like tribes here in Texas, like y'all are just kind of like a club. And I don't really care about those folks though, because like I know how I was raised, and it would be a disservice to my mother and all the work she's done to deny the culture she's so proudly put into us and connecting us to the land. And the part of my Karanakawa culture that I love and hold on to the most is our spirituality. I was taught really amazing lessons and things by my mother, who was shown and taught it by her mother. And when I was growing up, I was always told, and it's still something I'm kind of like overcoming to this day, to just keep it like real close, just keep it in the family. The practices that we would do, or like what we believed in. I remember my mom saying, like, yes, this is a gift. This is something beautiful. This is something that we've been doing since forever. It's in our blood, she would say. But these people here, they don't understand it. They would call you crazy. They will try to take you away from me. They will say that, like, we're weird. They would say that you're crazy. So I'm the most proud, definitely, of our spirituality. But to this day, it's an interesting relationship between being real proud and having a place of worship and altar in my home and still practicing to this day our spirituality and our medicines, but also being like so private about it. Because whenever I would, as a child, kind of like let people in on like a little bit of our spirituality, my mom was right. They would just call me crazy, they'd call me a witch, or they'd isolate me and stuff like that. Other than that, though, the spirituality, I love our like, definitely our fighting spirit. We do consider ourselves warriors, and every time shit got tough, or whenever my brother would show like real awesome athleticism, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's because of that sangre de indio. It's that Indian blood. It's our ancestors in us that are keeping us going." We try to find little bits and pieces that we hold on to and keep us connected and grounded.
Is there a story of some sort of your history or culture that you've that's meant something deeper to you that you've held on to for a while, or just a story that's part of your heritage?
There's the Night of 300 Howls, which tells us about how the battle happened between the French settlers and us Karanakawa folk, and then some Koko descendants. So we used to be like the Karanakawa nation took up the whole coast, and I believe there were like 7 bands in the tribe, but nowadays we for sure have 2, the Hawk and then the Coyote. The Hawk are in Corpus, and then I'm in Austin. And the Coyote are mostly in Houston. And we do got some Koko descendants. I'm not sure where they are though. We've just talked to each other on Facebook and like, hey, what are you up to? Oh, not that much. The Koko descendants, they have this awesome story that I hold on to that like takes us from when the earth was just the 4-legged people and the crawling people and the swimming and the flying people, when it was chained up together in islands, when everything was just together. And then it takes us to when the 2-legged people came, and like we walked up these island chains all the way to where the tall grasses started to grow, and where the blue herons, they whispered into us, our ancestors, which way to go, and we journeyed for generations and generations, and finally we hit the coast of like these lands here, and then we were introduced to our twin brothers, these ancestors who would eventually in the story start to make the Karanakawa as we know in the history books. So that story is so long, and it's definitely one of the ones that when I first heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, I am going to remember as much of this as I can, because keeping that tradition of orally telling the story is just so important. But definitely that one, because it dates us and it puts us on the map. And what was really cool is before we had contact with the Koko descendants, my uncle Absalom, who is of the Coyote clan, he had also spoken of 2 twin brothers that were like the beginning of like the Karanakawa, and to have these 2 different sources come together and be like, yeah, the twin brothers, right? I'm like, oh my god, like that was so great. So that's definitely the creation story of the Karanakawa nation is definitely one of my favorites.
So what are you hopeful for, I guess, for yourself, for people, and then also tying it back a little bit to Enbridge, the coasts, and everything there?
I'm most hopeful to be able to have lots and lots and lots of children. I'm going to try to have as many as I can so that I can, I want to get those numbers back up. I'm trying to build a nation again. So to have as many kids as I can and try to teach them all that we've done and in a good way and connect them to our culture. And, just like anybody wants to raise them right, but to raise them to have a relationship with our Mother Earth and to really treat our relatives with respect and to tie them back to where it all started. I'm excited to see that our younger generations, our younger Karanakawa Kadla, they're stepping up too. They're like my little sister. She's asking about the language. She wants to learn, and she shows up whenever we're doing ceremony, and she's into it. And I'm so excited for our younger generations because I'm already like the younger generation, and these even younger ones, like they're coming at it with so much force. And I've only been fighting this fight for like 5 years, and I'm already so tired. I can't imagine what my elders feel like fighting the fight for 40 years. So I'm excited for the younger generations because they seem like they're strong, like they want to do it. They're brave and they're unafraid, and I'm excited also for this fight against Enbridge to continue. I have been so not exactly surprised, but I've been kind of been made to be softer and kinder, seeing how folks are still showing up to our call to actions. Folks are still spreading around these words. Folks are starting to recognize our Bachmanae when we're walking around, and every so often now, I'll see our names in newspapers and in REI and magazines, and folks are starting to learn that we're not extinct. For me, that was my first fight. But secondly, when folks look up Karanakawa, they see that we're fighting Enbridge, and I'm excited to see what happens. I am of the belief to just expect and prepare for the worst and be really surprised when good shit happens. I know that regardless of what happens with this fight against Enbridge, that I feel at peace, even though it would be devastating, so devastating, to lose these artifacts, and that's not my goal. I would do anything I can to save those artifacts. But because of these protests and because of these gatherings, we found more Karanakawa. They had no idea we were still here either. And they reach out, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm Karanakawa. I had no idea y'all were still here. How can I help? So we're still getting folks that are coming in and helping, and I'm excited to see how much more we can find. Yeah.
I don't have anything specifically else to ask, but it's a free space to share. If there's anything that's you feel is important to share, you want to share.
Oh yeah, I always share at the end of every interview thing I've ever done is to whoever watches, reads, hears about, to look into your ancestry and to reconnect to your ancestors. And it's just so wonderful to know where you come from. It's not this hippie mumbo jumbo spirituality thing. Even you come from somewhere, and from wherever your ancestors are from, they came from the land. That's even how science says it. You came from someplace, and when you reconnect back to that land or those ancestors that brought you here, then you can start to grow these wonderful sturdy roots into the proverbial soil. And once you grow those roots into the proverbial soil, the trunk of your tree that is your life is so sturdy. Since I've reconnected with my ancestry and really gotten with my people, I feel so fully dressed. I feel like I belong. And it's not so much of oh my gosh, I don't fit in or what. And it feels like I am like connected. I'm part of the universe. I'm part of the land, and I always encourage everybody to do some research. Look into who your people are. See what you relate with. See how little things have actually changed. And I think that if everybody was able or lucky enough to maintain these ties that we have to our ancestry and our culture, they would be able to see how come this is such a big deal to us. It isn't about being here first. It isn't about owning the land. It isn't about being like a cool person, indigenous person, praying to the wind and wearing feathers in your hair. It's simply about being where you belong wherever you are. And to further that, I think that the culture of these lands we now call America has it's done like a huge disservice to its people, especially in how it classifies different races. I know tons and tons of folks who call themselves white, which is an erasure of such a rich culture. There are so many different cultures in Europe. So many. There's like the Welsh, they have an amazing ancestry with awesome spirituality, these phenomenal stories that are tens of thousands years old. The same thing you can do with any European culture. They all go back to somewhere on one specific part of the earth, and to just call yourself white, it erases all of that. And it might not sound important to the passerby, but if it isn't transformative, it's at least really cool to know that the people before you, the reason why you're here, they built those stories. And if those stories are still circulating to this day, there has to be something behind it. So yeah, that would be the last thing I'd have to say.
Do you have a quick little question? What is your favorite thing about yourself? And then what is something that's been on your mind lately?
My favorite thing about myself is that I can try to act as hard or as mean or as tough as I'd like, but I'm so soft. I'm so soft, and I just want to love people. I just want to give happiness and give peace. That's probably my favorite part, is that no matter what's happened, I just want to love people and be happy. I have this big ol' smile that is always on my face that I used to hate, and because it's like a huge representative of like, no, I don't want to smile, but it just naturally comes anyway. So I love that about me. I've only just recently started to like that about me. And something that's been on my mind recently, the emotional responsibility it is to build relationships with folks. I take it very seriously, perhaps too seriously. Separating my emotions from other people's emotions has been on my mind recently.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.